hear that sweet, sweet beat, you know what time it is. Plan C Podcast coming at you. It is a Sunday. It's a Sunday afternoon. It's a sunny day. The snow is melting. I'm about to go for a run after this. It's a fantastic day. Cameron, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I got a lot of work to do today, but, Guilty Gear has an open beta, so I'm having a good time playing some games and getting some work done.
Nothing better than being productive on a weekend, am I right?
Right.
Anyway, today we're talking about time again. So if you've been following us for a while, you know that we did a how time affects our outlook on life. We did that about a year ago, a little longer than a year ago, like a year, 3 months. And since then, obviously, tons have changed. There has been a fucking pandemic as well as the biggest social movement in the history of humans, social justice. And we just wanted to gather again and talk about it. We had planned for it to be about half an hour, but then we got into some really great stuff and we got really personal. So buckle up because it's going to be a great listen. I think it's one of our best ones. I'm really looking forward to editing it. What about you? How do you feel?
Yeah, I think it was I didn't even realize how much time had passed. We were just kind of
we were just talking. It's sort of been a little while that I've been like, okay, we need to wrap up.
Yeah.
I think I said thank you for listening 3 times at the end of it. So I really hope you enjoy. Make sure you are following, subscribed, you're liking, you're following us on Instagram, following us on Twitter. I hope that you have listened to previous podcasts, and if you haven't, welcome to the Plan C Podcast. Thank you for listening. Cameron, anything else before we kick this thing off?
Yeah, if you guys have any suggestions on things you want us to do in the future or anything like that, please do let us know. We're trying to get more people on so we can have more of a community and get everyone involved that has anything they want to say.
We have a Discord.
Yeah, so let us know.
Yeah, and if you yourself want to be on the podcast and you want to talk about whatever, hit us up. We're always down to give people a platform to communicate, because that's what we're all about. Being pragmatic and communicating. Am I right?
Yep, that's
y'all.
the goal.
We are Plan C. This is the episode starting now. And we're back. Well, I always say we're back, but it's really only like a 2-second wait. The reason we do that is because it's sort of a lead-in. Anyway, today, as you can see by the title, we are discussing time again. Clearly, a lot has changed since our last How Time Affects Our Outlook on Life podcast. That was on December 5th of 2019. And clearly, a lot has changed. So we sort of felt the need and the want to do a part 2. Cameron, what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, for sure. Last year, we definitely talked about how our perception of time has kind of changed since childhood. But now, since, as you know, COVID has happened, I believe in the past year, our experience with time has definitely changed more than it has in the past few years before this, for sure.
Yeah, the sort of curve that we would usually experience time on has definitely changed a lot.
Yeah,
and
so go ahead.
2024, a year ago, we weren't quite locked down, but we were sort of aware of coronavirus. And you just look at the last year and you just kind of got to not throw it away, but nobody really did anything.
Yeah, it was, in general, it was a time of a lot of stagnation.
Yeah, seriously.
This pod is about, as we experience more, our relationship with time changes. And this pod is going to be about how our perception of time has changed in the last year through COVID.
Yeah, which is essentially, again, a part 2 to our time perception pod, but with a little COVID modifier now because, well, we didn't know it then, but COVID existed then, and unfortunately, COVID still exists now. So, last time we talked about how work led into pressure as it relates to time, if that makes sense. And we sort of talked about how there were even certain cultures that didn't have perception of the future. And this time, I think we'll probably sort of keep it to us rather than doing more researchy data stuff. Because I don't know, I like getting personal.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun personal pod.
For sure. So starting off, COVID changed our perception of time. Why? Well, it forced us to sort of literally stay in one place and have a lot more quiet moments. And
Yeah.
if you have listened to this pod in the past, you know that the quiet moments are sort of the scariest moments where you're alone and all of those scary thoughts come in, whether it's self-consciousness, whether it's worrying about the future, whatever it is. When you're laying in bed waiting to go to sleep, that's when you're thinking about those moments. And I think because of the isolation of COVID, a lot more people were forced to confront those things without the distractions of everyday normal life.
Yeah, for sure. I think like also before when you could go outside, there were a lot more things that you could like distract yourself with.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're going, even just going somewhere to work,
Yep.
or going to hang out with friends or going outside to eat, going on a walk, like these type of things take you out of those internal loops and
Yes.
those thoughts. But like when you actually are just kind of forced to sit with them, I think it's also people realize how slowly time moves when you're really just like with yourself and you don't know what to do, like necessarily like activity wise.
Yep.
Like time moves a lot slower and you have to you're kind of forced to deal with a lot of things that you might be able to avoid by having time fly by playing games with friends or going somewhere.
Going to a bar, going to the office,
Yeah,
because that was what we were used to.
it changes the
And
mood.
exactly, because when you're not distracted enough, those thoughts in the quiet time are just going to get louder and louder and louder. Unfortunately, you can be the strongest person on the planet and you can still have fears and anxieties. That's just part of being a human. Unless you're what's
Yeah.
his name from Psycho-Pass.
Makishima.
Yeah.
How do you think COVID has changed your personal outlook on time?
Yeah, so I personally have always been a hermit. I wasn't like okay with lockdown, but I was in my head, I said, okay, I can sort of do this because I like my alone time and I like being productive when I am alone in those quiet moments, but I wasn't always productive, if you will. And
Mm-hmm.
so as we got later and later into quarantine and things sort of started to pile up. For instance, I went through a breakup, cat died, my mother got COVID, all within a span of 3 months. So you think you're all good, you're going to be okay, but then because you no longer have the ability to go out and distract yourself as much, those moments are you now have to confront them in a much more real way, much sooner than you potentially would have had to. The regular coping mechanisms that I didn't think were coping mechanisms,
Mm.
those disappeared. And when that happens, you sort of reevaluate. And other coping mechanisms that had worked in the past, they don't work now because the situation is completely different. So
Yeah.
it got really muddy because there's some days where you're like, what? It's Wednesday already? What the hell?
Facts.
And then other days, you're feeling your anxiety. You wake up at, I don't know, 9:30 a.m. and you're like, man, I'd really like to get another hour of sleep. and you're just tossing and turning, blah, blah, blah. And you're just, oh, I feel terrible. And you look at the clock again and it's only been 15 minutes. Like, what the fuck? So that's my long way of saying COVID just put a sort of loudspeaker next to those quiet moments. And luckily, I have a very good therapist who certainly has helped me a lot sort of coach myself through these times. What about you?
For sure. Oh, that was very poignant, by the way. Also,
Thank you.
yeah, I definitely do like agree with you that like now dealing with things, I feel like you have to deal with it as an open wound versus dealing
Yep.
with it as a scab
Yep.
because you
Oh,
can't.
wow. Look at that. Look at that. Wow.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Continue.
because you just can't put it off until the wounds heal from time, which is
Exactly.
unfortunate. For me as well, like during COVID, time is definitely like completely just like flown by.
Mm-hmm.
Like the days like blur together, and like the kind of monotonous nature of like just being at my desk most of the time, as I am right now,
Mm-hmm.
like just really aids that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
Seriously.
this may also just be like, now that I've gotten older, because time appears to like, move faster as you age. But I remember even in the last pod, I was becoming like more increasingly obsessed about how like I use my time,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to use it like as efficiently as possible.
Right.
And when I got out of college, that definitely became more it like the feeling became stronger for sure.
That makes
And
sense. Lack of
yeah,
structure.
yeah, there's no structure, so you're like now you have all this time to kind of like plan and prioritize. And for the first time, or not the first time, but more than I would like, I ended up getting kind of paralyzed deciding what to do.
I got you.
Yeah. And then this increased, just like in turn increased my anxiety and made the problem loop.
Oh, those thought loops are. Oh, I
Yeah.
I hate that thinking is cyclical like that sometimes, because you'll get yourself out of a thought loop and then 5 minutes later you're just back there and you're like, fuck you.
Yeah, it's some bullshit. It's the same thing. It can happen like from moment to moment, or even from like day to day, like waking up every morning and like spending an hour just like staring at the ceiling. Like that's the same. It's like
Uh
a
that
similar
was
like loop.
that was me this morning, bro. I was
Bro,
up at I was
same.
up at I was up at 10. I was like, ah, the day. And it's my day off today, so I should be chilling, but I personally have stuff to do in my planner. So I don't know. The anxiety kind of is like, ugh.
No, for sure. I definitely spent like an hour like just staring at the ceiling, even though I also do have a decent amount of shit to do today.
Bro,
But
be like that.
all of this is kind of experiencing this in the past year has made me realize that like working continuously is not like the best way to use or experience time for me.
Mm,
Like though I'm definitely still working on it, I found like being productive is more about like a balance of like healthy habits, like proactive scheduling, and more of like a diverse use of time rather than like a stringent one.
yeah, and rather than just being like, I'm gonna focus all my time on work or
Yeah.
school,
Just because
that.
like that's the efficient thing to do, or like, what you would like to do.
Yeah, and and then your brain just sort of gets used to that, and then going back to things that otherwise would have made you happy may not. And then in times like that, it's like, well, fuck.
Yeah, like I definitely like when I was really just trying to force myself to just work all the time, I ended up being paralyzed a lot more of the time, so I wasn't getting some work done. But also like things like that used to make me kind of happy, like video games, became more of a source of stress than they did like a source of relief.
Yeah, because
Which,
it's like, why are you not working?
yeah, why are you not working? Why you're playing video games? What are you doing? And that essentially started destroying my coping mechanisms that similar to you that I once had, that would really just keep me like in a positive mindset
Yeah.
and and like just having fun. So like taking time to have fun, taking time to plan, like taking time for like walks and exercise, I just realized are all close, if not like equally important uses of time, like to working.
Yeah, because your brain just can't do that. I mean, maybe some can, but I think there's repercussions for that. But make forcing your brain to just be so one-dimensional in that way just I feel like causes stagnation. And with
Yeah, for
that
sure.
stagnation just leads to anxiety.
Yeah. Like I'd like it was like a it's because I definitely like wish that I could just work all the time and just be happy and just be like just work because that's like if
That'd be
I could
great.
that'd be just ideal. It'd be the best way to kind of like live and kind of is the best way to exist in our current culture and society.
Seriously, just bust your ass at all times of the day, all the
Yeah.
time, every
The
day.
the grind is technically like the most efficient way to live in terms of gaining money and like advancing your career.
Yeah.
But like using my time to make sure I have like a good mental state has become like much more important to me than using my time to like strive towards a goal.
Well, yeah, because
Because
if you're
yeah,
continue.
because one can't happen without the other. Like
I
you
was
need
just gonna say you can't be successful if you're staring at a piece of paper with anxiety. You know,
yeah.
your brain isn't gonna be clear. That's literally the cloud of anxiety.
Yep. So if I was to like sum it up, I would say like how I value different uses of time has changed a lot during COVID.
Mm, makes
And I'm
sense.
I'm striving to become a bit more well-rounded. But
Good for you.
thank you.
Taking positives out of a really shitty situation. I will say though, once the vaccine, once you get it, I think there's a certain amount of anxiety that's going to go away because now you're able to sort of do more of those things that you originally pre-COVID like to do, right?
Yeah.
And those might be even better because the waiting we've been waiting. I haven't been to a bar for a year. A year. Granted, that's my own choice. Bars have been open, but still, I'm not the type of guy who's like, let's go to the club, let's bar hop, blah 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 blah. To be honest with you, I don't like spending my money like that. But would would I do it now? Probably, because I'd be like, I haven't been to a bar in a minute. Let's just go, just do whatever, just please.
Yeah. Just anything to kind of like change up the mood, change up the vibes, just like
Exactly.
diversity and that type of thing is definitely something I'm going to be looking forward to for sure. For
Exactly.
sure. One of the that kind of reminds me one of the feelings I haven't told too many people this, but I suppose I'll talk about it on the pod.
About
But
it. He hasn't told too many people. Time to air it. You're
facts.
getting the scoop here, folks.
When I first entered like the workforce, like I graduated like essentially as COVID was happening.
Yes.
And even though like everything was like super like every just really tragic, there was just so much like bullshit happening. Like just so much bullshit happening in the world at the time. I remember an intense feeling of relief, which was
Mm.
interesting. And I think it's because I knew that during quarantine that time would have less value. You know what I mean?
Or more value.
Well, it could be, but I mean in terms
Depends
of like
on depends on how you diversify your time, I guess.
yeah, but I mean depend like in terms of how people are seeing time right now
Yes.
because that there's less that people can do and there's less opportunities. I felt like there would be like less pressure to do things. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like time itself would have less potential and
Right.
thus less value. And I didn't realize necessarily like how strong that feeling is and like kind of like how much that almost like pushed off some of the anxieties I had about my career, being like a freelancer and stuff like that. But it is something that I kind of wanted to kind of touch upon.
Yeah, no, that's certainly legit. And I think looking back, especially on sort of those first 2 months of quarantine, man, we didn't get a lot done, straight up.
No, we did not. But at the same
We
time, I felt
just
like
chilled, ordered
we were having a
tacos.
great time.
No, I gotta agree with you because I think we were. And I think specifically because we are the age of just getting out of college, that the expectation was shifted for us specifically because
Yeah.
it was like, well, yeah, all the jobs that would have been filled no longer exist. And so now you just sort of got to do whatever.
Yeah. Like I don't it would have been a lot harder for me to freelance if everyone I knew was like getting jobs at firms and stuff like that. I would have definitely
And
felt like
exactly.
way more pressure to like get something really like substantial locked down so I could start like advancing myself into more independent role of adulthood. But
Yep.
like since everyone's home and it's very hard to get jobs, I found like there was a lot more freedom in my choices. And I would like it's probably mostly pressure I put on myself though. Of course, like there would be pressure from
Well,
the
that in
Padres as
society.
well. That in society, but it is I do find it interesting that there's a lot of like a lot more creative things are kind of happening right now. I think because people have that kind of that weight lifted off their shoulders, or they did for at least a bit.
I actually disagree with you.
You really?
Yeah, I think people I think that sort of wave of creativity has come the opposite way. I think people have been like, "Oh my God, I need to find something. I need to find something," because
That's definitely true.
they can't go to baseball games anymore. You can't go to brunch. I mean, you can go to brunch with your friends, but like you really can't. And so then again, these people are just left with so much time on their hands. They're like, what the fuck am I going to do? So they decide to make bread,
Yeah.
and they decide to start podcasts. Although you can't fault us for that because we started our podcast before COVID. Our podcast is older than COVID. Can confirm.
Yeah, it's definitely like people needed things to kind of fill the time and like fill that kind of desire to do something.
Yep.
And so we've seen like a lot of art, like a lot of stuff that you can experience. And I'm at the same time very thankful for it, even though the circumstances are from stress and anxiety.
I'm personally a little nervous when things open up again because that pressure isn't going to be twofold. Is it going to be sort of immediate? Is it going to be like rolled out? There's many things to consider here.
Yeah,
And
for
I don't
sure.
know. That's sort of just the anxiety of the future,
Yeah,
which, perception of time, baby.
that's shit because like it really like it, depending on how the vaccine gets rolled out for per se, like if everyone at the same time is entering the workforce at the same time, it's going to be like legitimate hell.
And it's a bottleneck.
Yeah, it's going to be legitimate hell.
Yeah.
So I guess in some senses it's good to be cognizant of the potential of that happening, but
Yeah.
not focused on it in the present moment because I guess it really doesn't have any value on what we're doing right now.
No, it doesn't. There's that feeling of, oh man, is it really as bad as we feel it is? And honestly,
Yeah,
most times, obviously we're in a really, really, really fucked situation, obviously. But when people are in their own heads, they hear themselves and they only hear themselves. So, you just start to catastrophize and you're bouncing and the thought is bouncing and bouncing, bouncing. So oftentimes people are putting so much anxiety on it that while it is terrible, it's not truly as bad as it is. It's just our emotions are sort of clouding what is reality because we're in a place where we feel so shitty, we can't discern the difference between the two.
no, for sure. I definitely think that, but yeah, I think that people can use the kind of negative emotions that they feel as a coping mechanism for like what's going on. If you know what I mean. Like
Wait, repeat yourself?
people can use like their negative outlook as a coping mechanism for the shit that's going on. And I'll explain.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, please.
like
Elaborate.
if you acutely feel that you're in a terrible situation, you won't feel as bad for not doing something about it.
Yeah, because it's like, well, what the fuck am I gonna do?
Yeah. Like, and I found this like you can see a lot of this on Twitter. You can see a lot of this on like a lot of the discussions about anything relating to people's hardships and people kind of like people literally fighting to be at the bottom of the barrel. You know what I mean? Like fighting to be like, oh, my life is the worst. Everything is terrible, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's actually because it makes people feel better to know that they're at the bottom because it gives them an excuse to not do things or it
Well, it's not.
excuses
It's
it's
not only
not an,
that, but there's there's a weird value to being to receiving sympathy in our
yeah,
society and sort of having reasons for things. And when the reasons are bad, they're easier to explain.
yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's there is a value of being put upon in our society right now. And I do
Yes.
think like even though like I'm not saying it's like though this comes off as kind of like negative, but like it's not like it's just
You
really just a
negative
coping.
Nancy.
It's a coping mechanism that like I think that we probably need to be like more consciously aware of.
Oh yeah.
Like it's okay to like kind of like to accept the things that are happening in your life are bad and acknowledging that you might not have been able to do the things that you wanted to do because of your circumstances and not being too hard on yourself because of those circumstances. But also I do find a lot of the time that people use those circumstances to kind of excuse their actions. And I also like I don't know if you've noticed, but like social media has gotten like just way more violent over the past, like not violent like literally violent, but like way more like
I would say in your face.
yeah, aggressive,
Yeah,
way more
yeah,
aggressive
yeah.
and kind of polarizing and harsh. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
definitely because that same feeling of like I being put upon helps me deal with my own anxieties can be turned against other people in a way that like, oh, well, you're not as put upon as me, so what are you complaining about? Or, like I'm like your values and your experiences aren't as important as mine because I need to feel like I'm the most put upon in order to deal with my own problems. Like we're kind of losing the ability to acknowledge that other people have problems as well as our own problems, despite us all being in the same situation, which
Yeah.
is
Oh, I'm sorry.
fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to deal with perspective and just people either not having it or not comprehending it,
Yeah.
and when we're in a situation like that, I don't think a lot of people are used to using sadness, anxiety, and negative feelings for perspective and
Yeah.
sort of, when they're feeling better, are they going to then look down on somebody else who's in a similar situation that they were, right?
Yeah.
Because they have the perspective to be like, you know what? It's going to get easier day by day. I just got to keep plugging away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah. I
think
mean,
that
yeah, go ahead.
once you have the sadness as a necessity sort of in your mind and you're not running from it, it makes it easier to acknowledge others because it's like, damn, they are going through a really hard time and I'm going through a really hard time. But you know what? I'm just going to be there for them because that's what good friends do or that's what good people do.
Yeah. It's like when you're in a bad place, it's hard to kind of empathize with other people. Like
And
I even find this myself for sure.
it's no, it is because in your head, you're like, they're complaining about what?
Yeah.
Like I remember I used to run into this problem where I had someone close to me die in the spring And there were some people close to me that, like, you know, when I would have bad days or something, they would get angry at me and shit. And it was like, please understand what's happening right now. I am
Yeah.
like torn up on the inside, so I can't. I am trying to understand you as best as possible, but I just need some patience. Just be patient with me and just let's communicate it out.
Yeah, for sure. It's like people think that their experience is like always going to be like the most important one, which is just being a human. But at the same time, it's important to acknowledge that other people's problems are equally important. Like regardless of like how big or small they may be, kind of compared to our own problems. Like I found a lot of the time, like even during I would say like kind of post Floyd movement and everything like that, I
Mm-hmm.
found that I saw some people bring up issues whether they were like some people in like rural country, like rural white people that were like, wow, we're really fucked right now, and like we have no jobs because all the factories are closed, blah 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 blah, like all like actually like really terrible issues, and then people would be like, well, Floyd is happening, so we can't talk about that. Like, why are you talking about this?
Mm.
And that to me made me intensely uncomfortable. Like intensely uncomfortable to see that that's how people were using this movement.
Yeah, and
You know what
sort
I
of,
mean?
yeah, and using the movement for perspective in the wrong way.
In the wrong way, and not actually, and again, it's not like these people are actually doing anything generally about the movement. Like sure, people went to a protest or two, but like even today, like if we're talking about actual substantial reform or anything, we haven't really seen any, and it's because people were more preoccupied with how they were feeling about the situation rather than what was actually going on. Though that would be a different pod. But
Yeah, yeah. I actually I love that idea. Emotion connected to hype, just
yeah,
in society. That's a great pod. I'm gonna hey, while I'm editing this, make sure I write this down. That's
yeah,
a good idea for a
because
pod.
I distinctly remember talking to people at the beginning of the whole Floyd thing, and like I was like, everyone was really upset, and they were like, okay, maybe like fuck this, we should do our own thing, like fuck these people, blah 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 blah. And I was like wondering, I was like, all right, so like after this anger is gone, like what is it that you want to accomplish? You know what I mean? Like because
Yeah.
like anger is limited. You can
Yeah.
only get so far with anger, and then like the people that actually get things done are the ones that still continue to work after the hype is gone, like after
Yep.
all that anger is out, after you've gone and like exhausted yourself. Like that's the time you get to the drawing board and you're like, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again?
Yep.
And as kind of expected, that didn't happen.
No, it's like it's like 1% of people probably. Like you think about all the people posting the black squares, right?
Yeah,
And like how many people that posted a black square a even care about black people? Like do you truly, or are you just doing that so that people are like, "Oh, look, they posted a black square. Look how cool they are." And again, I don't want to shit on people for doing things that they feel are profound, because that's your thing. Why is it up to me to tell you that that's not your thing, right?
yeah, I can't judge
But
it. Yeah,
I think when you're doing that and then you're not following up, it's disingenuous.
it
It's
is
like
disingenuous.
oh, I'm gonna do this, but eh, you know.
Yeah, like, and I've kind of like before, like definitely earlier in the year, I would definitely judge people a bit more harshly for their
Mm,
inaction, and I would actually become like kind of annoyed when people would kind of vent to me, like, and not that like venting is like, again, this is not a bad thing to like vent, like everyone needs to vent, but I would
yeah.
become annoyed when people would vent to me, and then I'd be like, okay, so do you want to do something about it? And they'd be like, well, no, or
I
like not
remember
well,
very
no, but like
specific conversations like that.
yeah, or
It's like,
like
well, what are you gonna do?
yeah,
Like you're so angry. Like, what's up?
Yeah, like what's the deal? Like you're angry, okay, let's do something. What? And they're like, well, I don't know, blah blah blah. I'm like, ah, fuck. Like it's that type of like that I don't know if you'd call it
It's like inaction.
dissonance, that kind of like that dissonance between your actions and emotions that personally just like kind of like made me upset. Though I've now come to not judge people as much because I understand that's kind of just like something people do. Like you can't really control emotions, and when you're emotional, it's hard to really control your actions. But it is something that I still feel is very kind of disingenuous at its core.
It's also it's hard to continue something that you were emotionally invested in that you're no longer emotionally invested in.
Yes, it's very difficult. It's very,
Because
very difficult.
at a certain point, if you're not into it anymore, you're like, what am I doing? Why am I still doing this?
Yeah.
And I think that that's not most people, because most people, and in my opinion, I don't, I'm just a guy. You can disagree with me, but in my opinion, when I see people with like the black square, I'm like what have you done? You want to post that, you're, oh, I'm for the people, blah blah blah, 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 blah. Like, are you? Are you?
Yeah.
And
Like I
I'm
kind
just
of go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just circling back to the time thing, I think that's what's such a bitch about it, because in the moment, it's not necessarily disingenuous that they're like, oh, I feel this way and I'm so angry, blah, 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 blah. But I think the further you distance yourself from it with inaction, it's like, yeah, your perception may have changed, but like what? Your principles changed overnight? Like, come on.
Yeah. It's like how much did that anger like really matter then?
Exactly.
You know what I
Like,
mean? Like how
how,
like what
yeah,
what was the point?
exactly.
But
Exactly.
like I kind of on that thought, I kind of realized that that's actually the vast majority of people. And I would even put myself into that bubble
I
frequently as well.
1,000,000,000% put myself into that.
And I think it's like I think that that's like I kind of came to realize that that's okay, that that's just kind of how most people are. But I think it's important to just like acknowledge it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like
think
I don't like it when people are like that, but at the same time pioneer that they've done this and they did that. Like that's the type of thing that makes me uncomfortable. But acknowledging that like we didn't do as much as we could have, we like, because at the end of the day it was young people that really started the large movement, and it's young people that really kind of dropped the ball at the end of the day. So I
yeah.
think accepting responsibility of that in some sense is something that I would like to see, rather than just have it fizzle out and then no one talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. And that's what the bitch of time is, because even in COVID, you'll find distractions from that stuff.
Yeah.
Because when you're not emotionally invested anymore, it's like, oh man, Super Smash Bros is looking really fun right now, instead of, typing this document I'm going to send to a public official that they may or may not read.
Yeah.
Um, or, I really don't want to organize this protest today. It's a lot, and I have to coordinate with a lot of people, and I'm going to be tired, and this, that, and the third. But
Yeah.
that's the bitch about time, because it muddles importance sometimes,
It really does. And
because you don't control life. Yeah, I don't know if I could even tell you my priorities a year ago, just because so much has happened. And yes, it's only been a year, but again, it's just been such a dense year that it's like, whoa, what the fuck? I don't even necessarily remember if I knew like specifically what was important to me a year ago.
yeah, for sure. I
Just be
definitely agree with that.
just because the time has shifted perspective so much, it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And also just kind of wrapping up the responsibility section of this kind of pod. We had planned to do like a police reform pod.
Yeah, no,
And
we did, and we had put like 3 hours into research and all of that.
I put in a lot.
You put
of
in
hours.
much more. Yeah, you put
I
in
put
much
in
more.
a ton of hours into research, but like I like the density of the research that I was doing, like at some point I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a lot. Like I'm not even sure if I can actually do this. But you know, maybe I might get back into researching it and kind of come out with like a retrospective of how things have gone. But it is
I
kind
think
of just
I think
go
that'd
ahead.
be a great idea.
Yeah, I think we should probably finish it up. May as well. But
Editor Colin, write that one down on the
yep.
books.
But it was a moment where I was realizing like, oh, like when we were researching, didn't it feel like time was just moving so slowly?
And it just felt
So
like,
slowly.
you'd read a paragraph and you'd be like, wait, I just read that, but I have no idea what it said. I have to reread it.
Yeah, it was like you'd read a page and you felt like you aged a year.
Yeah,
Like
seriously.
and I think that that goes back to like how I think we perceive time in that things that are difficult are slower
Mm.
and therefore I think we have less resistance to, especially in this age where we're trying to be as comfortable as possible. We have like a lot of distractions. I think
Mm.
we've probably lost some of that resilience to stress and conflict that would then make it easier for us to do things that we don't want to do.
Yeah, because you know, if you're a middle class or higher middle class American, comfort is sort of the goal at the end of the day. And I think you're
Yeah.
right that that pursuit of comfort has changed our resilience over time, because rather than maybe standing up and fighting through, we're like, oh, I'd love to be comfortable right now. And you run to your comforts.
Yeah, and I think that kind of echoes how people are kind of dealing with their stress now because now everyone's down on their dick. Everyone's like sad and stuff like that. And I think it comes because we don't really know how to deal with that like long-term discomfort anymore. Like regardless of your economic position, like I don't think that we've really like people our age especially have really learned how to deal with that type of long-term discomfort of not being able to do what we want to do. Like if you see people in like like less fortunate situations than me or you per se, like you would find that people that are really still working and like working to just make a living do not have the same type of like down on their dick mentality that like that a lot of our generation has because they don't have time for it. It's
No, they
just
literally don't have time, because it's like, I need to provide. I
yeah, it's
need,
just
like, that is the goal, that is the turkey. And I don't know, it's kind of fucked up that our society is sort of making that a policy choice.
yeah.
Like, oh, you don't have enough coin in your bank account? You may not be comfortable. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, and it's become like kind of a polarizing argument between like the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality
All that fucking
versus
90s Republican shit. No offense if
yeah,
you're a Republican. I think that pull yourself up by your bootstraps just does not. I mean, like, yes, obviously life requires hard work and you must be diligent and it's a battle of attrition, but like hard work isn't the only thing that's going to make it work.
yeah, and it's like contrasted by like the whole like holistic, you know, you have to take everything into account versus like everyone struggles,
Yep.
like the very like far left ideology of like taking essentially taking away personal responsibility over group over like having group think over personal responsibility
Mm.
and individuality, which is like it's like the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, oh, your tribe matters more than people's individual experiences, which
Mm.
is you know like we're in this extreme right now, and it's kind of really shitty. But
Seriously. Before we wrap up, you got anything else for us?
yeah, I remember we actually we probably we this actually ended up being a very like we didn't use a lot of the questions because we were just kind of like
No, we're just going.
we were just kind of fucking going,
Yeah.
but I remember one of the questions was like, has there been a moment that made you very aware of time? And has it changed
Yes.
you? Yeah.
Yes.
And do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, a week ago, actually, we're getting nice and personal, folks. So I don't know, I not coasting, but I had been relatively relaxed about where I was and doing stuff. And then I had a death of someone close to me relatively recently, and it sort of shook up emotions that I didn't realize were floating around, whether I had been subconsciously avoiding them or whatever, you know. I then literally had an existential crisis because it was like, whoa, like what the fuck am I doing? What's happening? What direction am I going in? And it was a really scary moment because I looked back and I was like, what have I done? Like what have I done in the past 2 years? And it's a time that's like, it's really scary because obviously, you know, there are obviously things I can point to specifically. Yes, started podcasts and working and blah, 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 and all that, blah, blah, blah. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, I want to advance my life, please. I would like to not live in my mother's basement anymore, as much as, you know, I am truly privileged to live here because I don't pay as much rent as people in the neighborhood and blah, 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 blah. I would like to advance. And that moment where I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? It just made me acutely aware of like, dude, you just turned 23. And right in that moment, it felt like I was directionless. And in that moment, you know, you would have intrusive thoughts where it was like, hey, like this would be a lot easier if like you're in a coma or something like that. Or, you know, and it's not like the negative thoughts are urges.
Yeah.
They're more just like thoughts where it's like, if I was dead, if I disappeared, stuff like that. And then that's when it sort of gets scary because it's like, oh, fuck, I haven't thought of these things in a really long time. Why am I thinking of them? I must be in a bad place right now.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so then the thought loops start because it's like, I'm in a bad place because I haven't done anything. And I haven't done anything because I'm in a bad place. And it's like, okay, which is the chicken, which is the egg? And then at the same time, it's like, no, wait, hold on. You're just feeling really, really shitty right now. Maybe the path you're on is fine. And you just need to stop comparing yourself to other people. Yeah, it's and it's scary. It's really scary because you don't know if you're gonna wake up the next morning and feel better. You don't know if, you know, you put on headphones and you try and turn on some music, that the music, like you'll hear the music, but it just doesn't. You're not. I don't know. It's different because like there's just anxiety there, and you're like, like I have anxiety. Like why can't I listen to music right now? I literally had to, I couldn't listen to music for like 3 days because I had so much anxiety, and I'd be like, wait, why are you listening to music? So I would just like listen to podcasts just so I was distracted by what people were saying.
Yeah.
And, you know, a week removed, I'm in a much better place, much better perspective and all that. And I know the path I'm on is the path I'm meant to be on. I, you know, did some little things for myself, like I got myself a planner and I set some minor but attainable goals that I can do in the short term. But, you know, those questions still remain. It's just sort of in perspective now because I'm like, okay, you know, take a deep breath. The sun is going to rise tomorrow. And you know what? Like, even if I feel this way, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to, you know, go to work, go for a run, record a podcast, prep a podcast, apply for jobs, whatever it is. I'm just going to fucking do it because I don't want to sit with this feeling of like, you're not doing anything. You're a loser, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I know I'm not a loser. I know I'm a bad bitch. I just need to like, you know, sort of get there.
Yeah. Be that person. Yeah.
Exactly. What about you?
Yeah. For sure. Also, just kind of tagging on, like, I definitely think that I also had like a lot of struggles with like really just like balancing my ego, you know, like making sure that I'm not like really comparing myself to other people's, like, you know, it's like, it's hard, especially like, you know, you got like social media and everything, like constantly like throwing people's ideal lives in your face, even during COVID. Like, or like or lives that you wish you kind of had. But I definitely kind of I'm definitely still working, obviously working on it, but like really kind of like whenever I have like a moment of like where my ego kind of kicks in and I'm like, oh wow, I'm really kind of like envious or jealous of this person. I kind of like, or comparing myself to someone. I really have to like ground myself in that.
You
Like,
gotta pull yourself out, and you just gotta be like, wait, wait, wait. Like, no, I'm on my own path, and it's hard to tell yourself that. It's hard to tell yourself that because you don't believe it. You don't believe
yeah,
because you're like, I'm saying this, but do I mean it?
yeah. I kind of like the way I kind of pull myself out of it is like if I kind of think like, okay, if I want what this person has, who I'm comparing myself to, I would actually have to accept everything else, all of their experiences. I would have to become that person.
Yes.
Like they didn't just get there that day because of simple decisions. Like if I wanted to have
They
what they
didn't
have,
just say, I'm gonna do this today, you know?
yeah, it's like, well, would I be willing to become that person and have all their experiences when I don't know really anything about them? It's like, well, no, I'm kind of happy about how my life trajectory has worked out. So I guess I can't become that person, and therefore I shouldn't compare myself to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah, definitely. Anything else before we get out of here? We're definitely going over.
oh yeah, I just want to I'll answer the question as well. That was just kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
yeah.
an aside. I remember that. Well, I'll kind of like intro it in, but like like time is like an illusion created by the mind to like help you function in
Yeah,
society and to like
time is literally just how we perceive gravity and light.
yeah
Just saying.
yeah it's how it helps you function in society and keeps you sane since everyone in our culture at least experiences time within like the same parameters. So
Mm.
it helps us all and like go on an even path without like losing our minds. However, like an interesting hypothetical to ask per se is like if you could not perceive time, like how would that change your outlook on the world? You know? And I had like a
That's a podcast.
yeah. And I had a decently large existential crisis in the past year where I felt this just like very strongly and in there were definitely like a lot of things I kind of learned from it. Like one thing that I guess I'll intro in here would be like or I'll talk about here and maybe we'll talk about other things on a different pod, but was the balance of happiness and stress throughout time.
Mm.
Like while I intuitively knew that like you need to experience sadness and negative emotions in order to experience happiness, what really like kind of kicked off my existential crisis was like a rare moment of like extreme jubilation and happiness.
Mm.
Like I felt like really happy, which is rare. But while I was in that state of happiness, like I kind of asked myself, like, like, well, you're happy now. Like, I don't think I can get any more happy. So what's next? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And when I
What's the
asked
next step?
what's the next step? Like when I ask myself, what if this feeling of happiness lasts forever? I realized that like then happiness would have no meaning.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's like because if I'm
Because there's no disparity.
yeah, it's because if I'm happy all the time, like why do anything? Why even watch TV? Like why would I draw? Why would I
Yeah.
need to see things and experience things or even think at all? Like why
Yeah.
do anything if it can't bring me any more happiness and I'll just be like this forever? It's like, and then I had a panic attack.
Yep.
As it goes. But
Yep.
this moment definitely changed me because it helped me realize that someone that is actually happy all the time would be a vegetable, you know?
I mean, would you rather be happy all the time or would you rather, suffer mostly for the opposite, for the little moments of happiness?
And I think I realized that I would I think most people at the end of the day would actually like if they experienced it would rather experience hardship a lot and then experience moments of happiness versus being happy all the time. Like being happy, like people, and I think that I think that it's like I realize that needs to not be my focus. Like, because it's impossible to be happy all the time. Like, and if you were, I would be a vegetable. So I'm not getting, and I had a panic attack because of it. So I'm like, I'm not really going to aim for that anymore. And so I guess it really taught me that negative experiences and stress are actually like incredibly important in my life. And I should kind of like, while I don't like experiencing them, I think it's important that I welcome them
Yeah.
and love them
And
rather than
embrace
try
them.
to embrace them rather than try to fight them all the time. Like,
Exactly.
I'm not looking for that ideal happy life, because then my life wouldn't have meaning. So
Yeah.
I need some of the time I spend to be negative, angry, or sad. And like, though I haven't like really comprehended how I'm going to do it yet, I'm going to try to embrace that feeling for sure.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's a good way to put it as we start wrapping up here, because for context, we plan to go for 30 minutes and we're encroaching on an hour. So, any other quick little points before we get out of here?
Um, I would just say, like, I think it's important to be like okay with negative emotions. And like, it's like we see that people love to be angry on Twitter, but I think it's like, I think in these times, like, even when we're thinking things that are negative, whether it be like you're jealous of somebody, or maybe you're angry at somebody, or these kind of negative emotions that we kind of like don't like to define us. I've personally, I've realized that it's important for me to kind of accept these feelings and realize that they're not like negative, they're not bad. Like, there's no real like bad and good feelings, but I think it's important to acknowledge them, like not to ignore them. Like, when I'm feeling jealous, don't be like, oh, you're not feeling jealous, you're fine. But like, to be like, okay, you're feeling jealous, accept
Yeah.
it, you know?
Like, all right, now
Or
what?
like, oh, like I'm feeling angry and I just said something irrational, and like kind of just like own it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that doing that, I think, will lead to just like a lot better discourse between people, and just having that kind of honesty with ourselves about the negative aspects of ourselves. I think is really important, rather than trying to like be this ideal version of ourselves that doesn't exist.
All right, y'all. Y'all heard it here first. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Plan C Podcast. I know, Cameron, you've got some stickers coming out, right?
I do. I put them in. They should be here by now, actually.
Come
But I'm
on,
not.
Vinyl Disorder. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. They said 2 to 5 business days. It's been a week. What y'all
Goddamn.
doing, bro? What you doing with my stickers, bro?
Well, there was some snowing
There
stuff,
was snow and stuff.
if there's like specific shapes, they gotta like cut them by hand. So
Yeah, so I'm not mad, but
Yeah,
but
stickers coming
yeah,
soon.
stickers coming soon.
Anyway, thank y'all again for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I recently checked our Spotify follower list, and it's over 50. Over 50 people are following us on Spotify, which I don't I don't know. I didn't expect that much, specifically because our Spotify listener base is only like 1/3 of y'all. So, hey, lots of love to y'all who are listening and following, whether it's on Apple or Spotify. I just can't check who follows us on Apple because Apple bogarts that data. Again, don't forget to like, share, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on Instagram. We've got a new social media person taking over our Instagram, so we're going to be a lot more active. And the Twitter is going to be more active too, because now that I don't have to focus on the Instagram so much, I can do the Twitter. Anyway, don't forget to listen to previous podcasts. We have interviews with artists, interviews with business majors, interviews with local, I don't want to say politicians, I'll say local leaders. Yeah, and it's just, we got some good stuff.
Oh, so, also just to kind of like talk about what we might be doing in the future. We might be doing some like maybe like 3 or 4 person pods talking about controversial topics and stuff like that.
We're calling it the pit,
the dungeon, whatever we got a name for it.
Whatever it is.
But yeah, so if any of our followers want to be involved in that at all, please also do contact us.
Yeah,
just hit us up. We'll probably
even if you don't know us. Even if you don't know us and you're like from Australia, we'd love to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your perspective.
Exactly. That's all we want. We just want voices.
Yeah,
Anyway.
So yeah, if you guys just want to spend some time, have a conversation with some new people, learn some things, please do hit us up.
Yeah, and you'll be on a podcast. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, thank y'all so much for listening for the third time. I have been Colin. That has been Cameron. See ya next time.
Peace.